start again. A brief history of the climate change issue deserves attention, because if we fail to recall history, then we are simply destined to repeat it. So, it was in 1896, 118 years ago, that Svante Arrhenius of Sweden published his scientific paper entitled "On the Influence of Carbonic Acid in the Air upon the Temperature of the Ground." That first concern about the accumulation of greenhouse gases in the upper atmosphere was then newly recognized concern based on a few decades of data after the commencement of the Industrial Revolution some 50 years prior. Being the first such report, one might forgive humanity and society and our governments and even scientists for apparently dismissing it. But since then, and in particular since 1972, with the Club of Rome report, we have no excuse other than to wonder about the role of science in informing policy and of wondering about who it is that we elect to make policy. How intelligent, I ask the question, how intelligent a species are we? The 1972 report's predictions remain on track, despite powerful forces to vilify it. This vilification has cost us decades of time for both physical and behavioral preparation for what is to come. This said, since 1972, others have been supremely active in warning us of the looming dangers of climate change, like Bill McKibben, who founded 350.org, as well as David Suzuki and James Hansen, among others. It is on the shoulders of these people that we in science stand today. These people have persevered in the face of indifference, hostility, and serious personal and other threats. These people are our heroes, whose purpose was to galvanize society. Today's event, although it is decades late, is one result which I hope will only gain in strength. However, this is not to say that one should ever give up and walk away, however frustrated we might become. To the contrary, we are faced with an already established pattern of climate change effects globally, and the projections are for an ever worsening state of affairs over each successive year. We are not going to fix this problem, as Einstein said, by using the same approaches that gave rise to the problem in the first place. Indeed, we need to think beyond the dominant paradigm for solutions to our current climate problem. Now, science is supposed to inform policy, but what happens when a handful of scientists, being seduced by money or ideology, are tempted away from the pursuit of truth and accept the fortunes offered to them, like from the Koch brothers of Texas's Heartland Institute? The Heartland Institute is a right-wing think tank whose mission, it seems to me, is sociopathic, in ensuring ongoing and ever-growing profits to those invested in maintaining the status quo, at least when it comes to fossil fuel use. What they do, in my view, is bad science, also known as junk science, infiltrating the scientific literature to cast doubt and foment uncertainty. This is not new. I come from public health, and I see the fossil fuel industry now using many of the very tactics used by the tobacco industry for more than 50 years, as well as by the asbestos industry in Canada and around the world for decades. These entities which we allow to exist deny the science and keep selling its toxic, deadly products. Coke Industries, indeed, has substantial holdings in Alberta's tar sands. On the other hand, let me focus for a moment on what happens when those who make policy deliberately downgrade scientific capacity. They willfully ignore evidence in order to support their ideological positions and partners in the fossil fuel industries from whom they reap political donations. The Harper government, for instance, has an undeniable track record of ignorance, indifference, denial, and active suppression with respect to climate change, environmental issues, and to science in general. Can we therefore be surprised that the public, and even some in government, still deny that climate change is real? As I see it, if they are not denying climate change, they are causing delays by fomenting doubt through the production of junk science. And if this does not work to their liking, they use their limitless monetary reserves to create division among scientists, creating a conundrum for policymakers by virtue of all of the uncertainty that they have generated. And if this does not succeed, they then discredit the scientists who work in the public interest. This is what we call the 4 Ds: deny, delay, divide, and discredit. Interestingly, there are those among the deniers who have adjusted their position to acknowledge the reality of weather patterns changing globally, thereby accepting that climate change is indeed real. But they then go on to claim that the changes in climate have nothing at all to do with human activity. They prefer to believe that the changes are part of some natural cycle phenomenon or the like. Yet the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's most recent assessment report of a few years ago says not so. Indeed, 97% of credible scientists say that climate change is real and it is the result of human activity. Tragically, as I see it, and in the splendid province of Alberta, we continue to fall into the denial category, voting into government leaders who prefer to follow the dictates of special interests. We have to ask, in whose best interests are our leaders working? Do they care about who is going to pay in the future for the calamitous harms already unfolding, destined only to worsen under current business-as-usual policies? Do they care about the harms being unleashed in developing parts of the world where people are not buffered through wealth against nature's great forces? I must emphasize that changes are necessary and urgent. The changes are going to be difficult and unprecedented, but ultimately manageable and absolutely essential if civilized society is to endure. Win-win options are available to us. So, I have posed some tough questions, but I must now leave you to make room for the next speaker. But before I go, I will be pleased to try to briefly answer any quick questions that you might have at this time, or please feel free to contact me by email afterwards. Thanks very much for your attention. Will things change? They'll only change if we look, I believe, to ourselves as arch hypocrites in all of this. When we start to walk the talk and try to work hard to change government, to change policy, only then will things change. Some people believe that the change will come only when calamitous harms come. In public health, our job is to prevent harms. So that particular end stage, I fear, because the harms will be enormous. We will see death and devastation on a scale that we've not seen in many, many years in the history of humankind, perhaps.
Where do we go to find out about the alternatives?
Well, I'm hoping that some of our further speakers will share some of their thoughts with us, and there are many wonderful non-governmental organizations that you can connect with, like 350.org, like the David Suzuki Foundation, like Canada's Council, Canadian Council. Well, there are many of them. Email me and I'll send you a list, okay? Thank you. All right, then, to save time.